So, there are evil gods and goddesses and good ones all over the realms, and they have holy places dedicated to them where their powers, for their clergy and other mortals who, just wander into them, are augmented and are different. These places are called Fanes. So here are some Fanes of Shar, the dark goddess.
Across Faerûn, there are a score or more locales where the shadow weave is stronger than elsewhere. Most of these are spots the goddess Shar has visited more than once, and where she has spent some of her divine power to make the shadow weave locally stronger. These places are relatively rare, and she tries, and often fails, to keep knowledge of them exclusive to her clergy. Many still serve as secret refuges. The Church of Shar will establish shrines for worship at such sites if feasible, as the locally strengthened shadow weave makes their rituals and cast spells stronger. Many of them are wilderland dells or ravines. Here are a handful of such locations. Balakkur's Chalice, a particular still-in-use old warehouse in northeastern Northbank, Scornubel, that's never borne a signboard and is sufficiently far from the river to boast cellars, though the reek of mildew makes it clear that these stone-lined chambers are unsuitable for cargo storage. Walls of rotting crates of fabrics that spoiled long ago, mainly bolts of brocade and samite, rise everywhere in the gloom, forming a maze that can be traversed through 5 progressively smaller rooms to a well chamber that has a rear wall made of spongy, rotten, stacked wooden kegs at first glance. The kegs seem to hug the northern rock wall of the hewn out of bedrock chamber, but anyone could duck around the right-hand or eastern end of the kegs to access a rough-walled tunnel sloping westwards and down in a long ramp to access a large, low-ceiling dugout chamber under the cellars, the Chalice. Balakkur was its founder. All that survives of his memory is his name, and that he was a handsome man who had a bold, merry, insolent character and made many enemies. Originally, this was a brothel and tavern run by a long-vanished trading coster to financially support the Scornubel end of their trade routes to and from the Sea of Fallen Stars, and its name survives from them. However, the brothel became notorious for 2 frequent murders of clients there, fell out of popularity, and eventually closed. For a time, the deep chamber was used to store weapons and other goods intended to be smuggled into law-abiding realms under the noses of tax authorities, but the storers were gradually exterminated by the armies of those realms, and because residents of Scornubel knew they could use it to dispose of the bodies of murder victims, which served as ready food, the Chalice became popular with lurking carrion-eating monsters, and so fell into dark disuse by everyone else, until Shar chose to meet with local worshippers there and returned several times throughout the 1300s and early 1400s DR to give them instructions. The Chalice became her local temple and is today guarded at all times by clergy who reside in the warehouse above and nearby residences in the city, and presided over by Dark Hand of Despair, Malakhera Yoravarams, a neutral evil Chondathan human high priestess of dark beauty, purring sarcasm, and a malevolent yet more than even character. Under her leadership, local Sharans make a lot of funds dealing in poisons, potions, smuggled wares, kidnappings for hire, and stolen goods. Such things are usually stored elsewhere in Scornubel, not in the Chalice, where the shadow weave is dark and so strong as to lend a chill thunder to the air and more or less double Sharan spells in duration, area of effect, and power, and in damage. The Delve, a small, deep ravine not far south of the northern edge of the westernmost Archwood in Arkandale. Long used as a meeting place by local Sharans, it then served as the last resting place of Helvra Hallowinter, a fatally wounded in a dispute with Sembian merchants and their bodyguards in Archtassel, priestess of Shar, who'd previously met there many times. When wounded, Knowing she was dying and not wanting her body to be found and robbed of a sacred to Shar obsidian knife and bowl, she struggled to the delve to breathe her last, praying to Shar as she died. Her prayers brought the goddess there to praise and thank her as she expired, and Shar then magically drew on the skeleton of the priestess to weave a fence of dark thorns around the steep-sided, short ravine. Today, there's a rainwater pool at the bottom of the always gloomy cleft with many spiders and growing toadstools, and a narrow but 60-some feet long, relatively level floor of moss-covered ground. The high, thick wall of thorns parts if Shar is spoken aloud within 10 feet of it, and then reseals itself a minute later. The air in the ravine is warm, whatever the weather outside, and roils with currents of energy that crackle and can be felt. Lightning-based shadow weave spells cast here will erupt for 6 times the usual length or area and thrice the usual power damage. All other magics cast calling on the shadow weave are also augmented in various ways. Sharans traveling to and from Cormyr, Sembia, and various dales meet here surreptitiously, in septets or smaller numbers, as the local Arcan detest them as much as they hate all other intruders who do anything in the dale that smacks of assembly, authority, or wielding magical power.
That's a pretty nice mug you got there. Ed, where'd you end up getting that?
Oh, my mommy and daddy gave it to me. It's genetics, you know. But oh, you mean this mug? This mug is something you could buy at my shop. Warning, unsupervised wizard, and I am.
If you want to get some Ed Greenwood official adventuring gear, you can check out the link in the description. Or if you want to support Ed another way and help us continue making these videos for you, please check out patreon.com/Ed Greenwood, where you can become a protector of the realms. But for now, please enjoy the rest of this video.
Thank you. Yeah.
Duskrill, a shallow vale named for the tiny stream or rill that meanders across it from the rocks where it rises in the southwest to a pond that's a sinkhole draining very slowly down into the Underdark to the northeast. This vale lies in the western lee of a rocky hill, Tanarn's Tor, due north of the northernmost arm of the Spiderhaunt Woods, nigh Digerdale. Several old gnome and dwarf tombs, shallow passage complexes descending from the rear of natural caverns here, running northwest into the foothills of the Desert's Mouth Mountains, have been repurposed by Sharans to camp in for short stays. Food, tools, footwear, cloaks, and other garments, and cots are stored there, and there are usually half a dozen Sharan clergy in the Vale at any one time. Shar has strengthened the Shadow Weave greatly in Duskrill, so Sharan spells and rituals are boosted when worked there, though the extent to which they benefit seems to rise and ebb randomly. Elminster is of the opinion that this is due to ancient gnome and dwarf enchantments on the tombs that are drinking of the weave, and so making the shadow weave weaker when the drains on the weave are strong, and stronger when the drains are slight. The Traveling the Dales and Hillsfar and the refounded Ordulan Sharan priests Havelock Dunstran, neutral evil human male, priest 7, battle hand of despair, and Rartrial Gandalakahan, neutral evil human male, priest 6, hound of shadows, often work major magics and preside over Sharan gatherings there to plan operations in Sembia, the Dales, and the Moonsea. Jalander's Farm. On the Valen Peninsula, between Haunted Manor, Athion, and the ruins of the abandoned village of Dargree, is an overgrown, disused farm. Several fields whose stump and stone boundary fences can still be seen in verdant, rolling terrain. Springs rise above the farm in the westernmost Dragon's Head Forest and flow down through the fields to the sea. Along the largest, back in a hollow that can't be seen into from Firedrake Road, is a Shar-strengthened, ever-present gloom cloud, or wind-resisting area of dark mist. A local Sharan Fane, where Sharans operating in Alm and Tethir sometimes gather to confer, exchange supplies, and work magics augmented by the locally Shar-augmented Shadow Weave. No one alive today remembers who Jalander is, but a Sharan priestess who often leads rituals in the Hollow has adopted that name as a nickname. So she's now Ferandra Jalander Shuklandar, neutral evil human female, priestess 9, shadow flame. So Sharans will know she's the local favorite of Shar, who presides here. Kulgaunt's tomb, an ancient Barrow tomb on the northern edge of the easternmost snakewood, due south of the southern edge of the Troll Mountains, southeast of Burdusk and the Green Fields. This locale has prowling troll guardians that Sharan magic, enchanted tokens borne by Sharan clergy, or spells that create the same effect, can keep back, so they menace anyone approaching except Sharans. No clergy call the tomb home or tarry there long, as the isolated wilderness locale has no food, thanks to the trolls, nor readily available water. Sharans meet in the cramped, cold confines of the stone-lined tomb, a long and wide passage, with now empty, looted long ago by necromancers who animated the dead to walk out of the place and serve them, burial alcoves lining either side, and a stone block altar at the end of it. Shar listens and often speaks out of the altar, and a chilly magical gloom surrounds it, born of her augmentation of the shadow weave. This power extends throughout the tomb, but is strongest when touching the altar, and reportedly has greatly augmented some Sharan magics, but only mildly boosted others, this variation being not understood by the Sharans, and so considered the whim of Holy Shar. Kulgaunt wasn't the maker of the tomb, but a dwarf adventurer of the late 1200s DR who discovered it, and briefly used it as a storage cache location until the trolls got too bad for its use to be worth it. The Secret Shrine. Despite the name of this natural cavern under a house cellar in Mulhessen, on the northern edge of that settlement, a town in Sembia where the Belduc Road meets the Way of the Manticore north of Faerûn, word of it has spread, but just of its existence, not how one gets into it or any details of its importance, size, or features. The house is a small cottage, no grander than many nearby homes, and the comings and goings are concealed by the fact that this cottage and several others that stand nigh it are rented out to travelers, a habit that began when a local inn burned down and an outbreak of plague slew or drove away the owners of the cottages in 1312 DR. A local merchant purchased most of the neighborhood and began making coin from wayfarers, turning his bakery into an eatery and making more coin from them that way. The merchant, Ithbaltan Murumrond, was later murdered by a Sharan priest from Surlegal, one Jazan de Condry, who wanted the income the merchant was enjoying and got it. When he sought to enlarge the cottage cellars and discovered the cavern, he prayed excitedly to Shar, and she manifested to him and was so pleased by the strategic location of the large, many-armed cavern that she worked a mighty magic to augment the shadow weave, devouring the life of Condry to do it. Today, the shrine is presided over by Veldrarin Oland, neutral evil, human female, priest 7, hand mistress of despair, who dwells in the cottage above the cavern. The way down to the cavern is concealed in the closet of the smallest back bedroom. Vale of Shadows. A dell between two foothills along the northern flank of the Nether Mountains, directly south of the eastern end of Arned Forest, where a small spring rises, trickles north down the hillside, and drains into a small pond, which is a sinkhole. The water seeps into the uppermost Underdark from its depths, rather than flowing on elsewhere. The location is far too remote and the weather too fierce in winter for permanent Sharan habitation. But the shadow weave is very strong here, and Sharans often journey great distances to camp and meet here and work powerful magics. Once they magically assembled an undead colossus to menace Sundabar, but adventurers destroyed it before it could reach that city. The Church of Shar, correctly, believes that this favorite place of the goddess is where Shar dances. Those dances aren't just pleasure or entertainment, they are magical weavings of great power the goddess does, though rarely, and increasingly rarely these days, as Shar seems to be guarding her power. The goddess often appears to Sharans who pray to her, in the Vale of Shadows. And there you have it, Fanes of Shar.